The information they were providing were local addresses, local names of judges. He gave me the address, which it turned out it was at a gas station. They were able to knock it down to 3,000, which at the time I did have access to. If this is a mistake, I need to get this taken care of now so that I don't lose my job.
Well, fraud happens every day, and good people are getting swindled out of their money at an alarming rate. On the True Fraud podcast, I sit down with victims of fraud and listen to their story. Then I chat with experts to analyze what happened, talk through the red flags, and leave you with tips and tricks to avoid getting scammed yourself. I'm your host, Billy, and this is True Fraud, Real Stories, Expert Advice, brought to you by Pacific Crest Federal Credit Union. Welcome to the True Fraud Podcast, Real Stories, Expert Advice. And today I'm joined by Dr. Kevin Garrett, who is our expert today. Tell us about your job. What do you do?
Sure. So primarily I'm a associate professor of marriage and family therapy at the Oregon Institute of Technology. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Okay.
And I also do have a small caseload of clients that I see in the community.
Okay, great. So, how much experience do you have with fraud? How have you run into it before in the past?
I don't have a lot of experience with fraud. However, someone was able to hack into our checking account about 15 years ago. And so we had to deal with that. That was in another state.
Yeah.
But the credit union that we dealt with was very helpful, helped us through that process, and we were able to recoup our money, which was helpful.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to talk to you today because, in the past we've had experts on that, are experts about fraud, very specifically about fraud. And what we wanted to talk to you about today is kind of the psychology behind like what's going on in people's minds when all of this is happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So today we're going to hear a story of a guy named Nick. I interviewed him a little while ago. A great guy. You'll hear in the interview. He's a very sensitive guy, like he's very in touch with his emotions and could relate with a lot of detail to what he was thinking, what he was feeling at the time. And so I think this is going to be a really good one. I think you're going to be able to give us some insight into what was going on. And so we have a red flag system. So when you hear something where you're like, oh, that's a red flag, like, something was going on, you can raise the red flag, and we'll be sure to talk about it at the end of the interview. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and play his story, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Would you like me to raise the red flag during the story?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was actually at work when I received a phone call from a local number. And when I answered, they said that it was the sheriff's department. I personally have had very little experience with law enforcement or, the judicial system. So when I got this call, I was a little surprised. And then they asked me if I had done a payroll protection loan. They said I had one on record that I had not paid back, but they were reaching out on behalf of the government, essentially, because I had defaulted on this loan under my name, that there was an arrest warrant out for me. I informed them that I did not have one of these loans, and the person on the other line said, okay, well, if this isn't you, this is what we have to do to, make sure that this doesn't blow back on you if this is fraud. He switched to trying to be helpful, get me out of this situation that wasn't my fault. He sent me an email with some documents that showed a loan application form with my name on it. In the email, provided an arrest warrant that had the Klamath County logo on it. It had my name on it. It had the name of a judge. It was an Oregon-based judge. The information they were providing were local addresses, local names of judges. I was scared. I work at a nonprofit. There was lots of background checks for my position. And if I do get arrested, that could impact my employment. So that was the first thing I was thinking of was, if this is a mistake, I need to get this taken care of now so that I don't lose my job. Like I needed to know what steps do I need to take to get this taken care of. The next thing they informed me of was because there was this arrest warrant out, if I did get stopped, I could get arrested. So in order to prevent that, I had to essentially pay bail. He essentially told me that there was a kiosk that I could go to that would process this for me. And he told me the amount was around $5,000. But when I informed him I didn't have that much, he said, that's understandable. I will try to call the courthouse real quick and talk to a clerk to see if we can maybe adjust that number for you. He sounded like he was trying to be very friendly and help me out of a situation. That empathy that I was feeling at the time through the phone call definitely led me to believe that this person was trying to be helpful and made me want to trust them. And one of the things they told me was because this was out there, if I got pulled over or if I had interaction with law enforcement, their directive would be to arrest me, even if I showed up at the sheriff's office. I didn't think about hanging up and calling because he also provided me a direct number in case something happened, and I looked up that number and it was associated with the Klamath local government. So he did call the courthouse saying on my behalf, we will try to work with them and you to try to lower the amount that you have to pay today in order to not get arrested. I'm freaking out in my head. Entire time I'm sitting in my car with the fear and anxiety that was building. And he told me that they were able to knock it down to $3,000, which at the time I did have access to. Part of it was in a savings account and I had part at home. He's like, okay, I'm going to mute myself while you are driving to be safe, so that nothing happens that would lead a local officer to maybe pull you over. Like if I'm distracting you or don't want you being erratic, please be safe, all of that kind of thing. Request that I did not mute in case I needed to ask a question so he could come back on the line was his reasoning. I was able to go home to pick up a little bit of money there, as well as go to an ATM to withdraw some money. He gave me the address, which it turned out it was at a gas station. In retrospect, that there were definitely red flags after the fact, but in the moment, with my scared anxiety brain, I wasn't thinking about that. I've actually had trainings about what happens, the chemicals being released in your brain during high stress situations. And so during these trainings, they tell us these are the things you can do to try to mitigate this happening to yourself. But it's so different in a training versus this happening to yourself. I went to the kiosk. Like I said, they sent me a list of instructions of how to operate it. And so I went through the steps, it asked for an account number and they had provided me one to access. And so I proceeded to deposit the cash into this kiosk. I actually contacted the kiosk company. It is for depositing and transferring crypto, but nowhere in anything labels or the menu system or anything did it mention crypto or any sort of cryptocurrency. If I would have seen that word, I'm like, okay, this wouldn't make sense to transfer my cash into crypto for bail. And then so I deposited it and I got a receipt that showed how much I did and all that. And they told me, make sure to hold on to that. That is your proof that you've paid this bail. And then we will process this overnight. And then in the morning, you are able to come into the sheriff's station to get this matter taken care of. At this point, it was in the evening. I had probably been talking to this person for 2 hours, roughly, trying to figure all this out between that and getting the cash and depositing it. They said overnight this would be processed. By the time I got home, it was probably 15 minutes after hanging up with this individual. The red flags did start to appear in my head. And I called my partner and she had questions. As I'm explaining it and those red flags are popping up. And so I did call the management company that does this kiosk and they told me Once the money is deposited in there and it's transferred to someone's account, they can't return it. It is an immediate transfer. They asked for the account number so that they could look at the transaction history. The account had already been shuttered with all the money removed.
Did you talk to the sheriff or some police agency?
By the time I was done talking with the kiosk company, it was pretty late. And at that point, I was so mentally, emotionally, physically exhausted that I determined it would be better if I just went to bed at that point in time, and that I would go to the sheriff's office first thing in the morning.
And they told you to, even.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part. They told you to go to the sheriff's department.
Mm-hmm. And so I arrived and I showed them the emails I got and these images, and they were even surprised at how close to their documents this looked. Like, this was so close that anyone would have no reason to believe otherwise. I definitely felt a lot of negative feelings towards myself. I felt shame. I felt like I should have seen this coming, and that if I was in a rational brain, I wouldn't have fallen for this. I was lucky enough that I was in a situation where it wasn't my life savings, where I wouldn't be able to save it again.
If that person was sitting in front of you now, the person that was on the other end of that call, what would you say?
I would just question how they could hurt people, how they could do these actions that are there's absolutely no justification for any of this. I'd probably want to yell or cry. I don't even know. It's just the whole situation is just so alien to my way of thinking. I try to believe that people are genuinely good. I can't even imagine what is going through someone's mind in a situation where they're trying to harm these individuals for their own gain.
Yeah, this was wrong.
100% this was wrong, and there's no excuses.
All right. So, a lot to unpack there. First thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that the perpetrators really used that fear response that's automatic in the brain.
Yeah.
To swindle this person out of their money.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me what happens. What's going on?
Mm-hmm. In the brain?
In the brain. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, there's a lot of research on trauma and the fear response, or that fight or flight response. It's oftentimes talked about, and it's almost, a topic of conversation at meals now. I think that fight or flight response.
Yeah.
But that's part of the autonomic nervous system, the involuntary part of our central nervous system. And one of the things that really happens is that the amygdala, which is part of the limbic system, a very small part of the brain, is like a warning bell that gets triggered.
Okay. That
fear is present and we need to react. Right?
Okay.
Either we need to flee or we need to fight. And then sometimes there's even a freeze response that occurs. But I think that with that fear response, oftentimes we will make very rash judgments in that moment, because we're not utilizing the prefrontal cortex of our brain, which is that logical, rational part of our brain. It's like that amygdala and the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain, hijacks the prefrontal cortex, which prevents us from really thinking things through like we normally would if we were calm.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So when the amygdala triggers, I guess, I'm guessing this is when we feel some things, right? We start feeling adrenaline or...
Exactly. That fight or flight response. So our heart rate starts going up. We start breathing heavier. Different parts of our bodies actually shut down to help us prepare to either fight or to run.
Okay. Yeah. So, and the interesting thing I feel like in this case is that, they were obviously preying on the fear, right? They somehow caught a whiff of the fear, must have been early in the phone call, and drilled right into it, and they knew exactly what to say and what buttons to push.
Absolutely. And they knew how to be empathic. Oh, well, we're going to help you through this. It seems like you're willing to work with us on this, and so we're going to work with you. And they were very kind and very nice. And
And that's what you want, right? I mean, if I'm going through a problem, I want you to help guide me through it, because you know what you're doing. You've done this before.
Right.
Yeah. Because we want a guide. And then, it's really interesting because, like you said, it kind of short circuits the prefrontal cortex, or it hijacks it. And then, but then they provide some evidence, right? That may not be real, but in the moment it feels real. They sent him an email and they gave him a phone number and all this stuff that made it seem like this is legitimate. So you don't need to engage your prefrontal cortex because, we've already got that part figured out for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, the scam part is kind of easy to figure out, right? So they spoofed a number. That's a pretty common thing these days is, it can come up on your caller ID as anybody they want. From our credit union, we get this all the time. And their call centers is really what they are. And these call centers are, they will spoof even the credit union's phone number and say, this is your credit union. And, you owe us money, or, a million different stories. And so in this case, they said, we're the Klamath County Sheriff, and there's a warrant out for your arrest for a PPP loan, which, he never took one. He said he never took one of these loans. So just kind of a bogus story. But he knew that part was bogus, but here's a guy that's trying to help him through it. Like, oh, there must be some mistakes, so we'll help you through it.
Right.
The bail part is interesting because that's not how bail works, at least. So this happened in the state of Oregon, and that's not how bail works in Oregon. You can't prepay your bail or anything like that. And so if there's a warrant out for your arrest, there's a warrant out for your arrest. It's that simple.
Sure.
And no amount of money is going to get you out of that. And I don't know how often warrants are issued for not paying back a loan. I'm not sure exactly how that works. But
and they even had a government number. I mean, it sounds like he did check on some things and look into some things,
right,
to see if it was legitimate. And they look like they were.
Yeah. They gave him a phone number that was a Klamath County number. I'm curious what would have happened if he would have hung up and called that number. I doubt it went anywhere.
Right.
Really. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. But really all it takes is a Google search, and you can get a judge's name. You can get, our sheriff's name and all that stuff, no matter where you're at in the world. And you can provide this evidence. So, I'm curious, from your perspective, how you deal with this. Like I'm sure in your line of work, you deal with trust and broken trust all the time. So, this is a case of a stranger breaking trust, but what do you think about, how people should be thinking about this, or, how should they be answering their phones? Should they just not be trusting anybody? What do we do?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. That's a really big question. And I don't want to say that you should lose trust in humanity. And he talked about, I generally believe that, and I want to believe that people are inherently good.
Yeah.
And that's still how I believe. Unfortunately, there are those out there who are criminally minded and who want to prey on those who are sensitive, or those who, are caring, or decent human beings.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So my thought is, definitely, if something like this happens, if you get a phone call like this, especially when your when your amygdala is being kicked off, being triggered, and it's hard to think rationally and calmly, to try to just take some deep breaths and even make an excuse to try to get off the phone at that moment, and maybe to call back later.
Yeah.
When you're in a better place.
Yeah.
Maybe also, like he said, he consulted with his partner, but it was after the fact.
Yeah. Right.
So consulting with other people, and especially if you are hearing those red flags, and again, it's really hard when the amygdala is kicked off and there's that fear response. Something's wrong here. There's a threat.
Yeah.
I need to react. I need to react immediately to alleviate, to work with the situation, to alleviate the fear or the stressor. It's really hard to think calmly, but oftentimes mindfulness and trying to ground yourself is going to help you get back into your prefrontal cortex to be able to think logically. And sometimes time can do that. So not making rash choices, not making rash decisions, taking your time, trying to come back at the situation when you're feeling calmer.
Yeah. Try to slow it down. Now, of course, they know that you will make more rational decisions if you give yourself time. And so they're trying to keep people on the phone. He said he'd been talking to them for 2 hours at this point and put me on mute so that I can, so they can listen to everything that happens just in case he starts talking to somebody is why they want you to stay on the phone. So you can't call your partner. You can't call somebody else to say, what should I do? Because the other person, when we listen to a story like this, we're like, well, obviously something's wrong, right? Something's fishy about this. Hang up, call back, do something different. But in the moment, that's not what happens.
Absolutely. And again, these scammers were really good at what they do. They're really excellent at their craft. They knew how to prey on those emotions and that fear response.
Right.
And they knew also how to be empathic when he was feeling fearful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's too bad they didn't, go to school, become a counselor or something, right?
Do something for good. With those abilities. Absolutely.
Right. And one of the things that they do is they kind of, introduce that sense of urgency. It's like, you've got to take care of this now because, there's a threat to, he said he was worried about losing his job. He's worried about his reputation. There's a big threat to all these things, and you're going to go to jail and, you're going to owe a whole bunch of money and what are people going to think? All of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And that sense of urgency, like we've got to take care of that now is a big part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really is.
I wrote this down. Nick had a hard time seeing the situation objectively while he was in it, even though he's had training, like, he's had training about probably the very things we're talking about, fight or flight and the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So, so you gave us a few bits, try to slow it down, hang up, call back later, sleep on it, maybe give it some time. Anything else you can think of?
Well, it's something that I oftentimes in training and teaching students, future marriage and family therapists, one of the things I like to say is when in doubt, consult.
Yeah.
Don't go it alone. And especially over the phone, if someone's asking you for money, I'm always, as soon as I hear that, even if it's a wonderful story and there's a good reason for that they're asking for it, I always question that.
Yeah.
Especially in this day and age, even being careful about letters or mail that you receive as well. Although I'd rather receive mail or letter because then you have some time. You don't have that same urgency that you have to respond like you would over the phone. Yeah. In his particular situation. Again, these folks were really, really good. They knew what they were doing. And so in his situation, it's possible I could have fallen for the same thing,
Yeah. Especially with email evidence and all this stuff that they're producing. Yeah.
And I think he said the sheriff's department was even surprised with how legit everything looked.
Right. Yeah. So, just curious, if Nick were here, is there anything you'd say to him?
I think other people in your situation may have also, turned over their money, quite honestly.
Yeah.
But again, I think that it's really important when now over the phone, if people have these stories, we still have to be very, very skeptical about that and not just hand it over and take some time, maybe make an excuse about, hey, well, can I get a phone number so I can call you back? I need to look into some things.
Yeah.
And they might even find ways to try to keep him on the phone or to continue to impress that sense of urgency upon him.
Yeah.
That he needs to react now.
Yeah.
But it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So somehow slow it down. It sounds like that's the biggest takeaway here is slow it down somehow, whether that's hang up, whether that's give it time, talk to somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Try to tap into that prefrontal cortex, the calmer part of our brains.
Right.
Yeah. That help us think through things.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nick also talked about feeling some shame about all of this. And this is a very common thing when it comes to being defrauded of money.
Sure.
you have any response to that feeling?
I mean, I could understand that, that, how could I have let this happen? Like you said earlier, he knew later on, wow, I fell for this. I should have known better.
Yeah.
Type of a thing. And I think that oftentimes we often think, well, in this situation, we're not going to fall for that, or, we're not going to do that, or it's not going to happen to me. And in reality, it really can. So I think it is important that we try to slow things down, consult, try to not make rash decisions, especially regarding financial situations like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on this podcast. We're a credit union, and so we operate a little bit differently than we're not a business like a bank. We're a not-for-profit, and part of our culture is trying to get information out to the community. Try to help protect our members against fraud like this, because this is a bummer for everybody. That's money that has left our community. It's a bummer for Nick, but it's a bummer for everybody in our community. And so, we want to try to help people and show people what the red flags are. And hopefully, if somebody else has listened to this and gets that same kind of a call, they can follow some of the advice that you gave today. Slow down, talk to somebody, consult with somebody. Don't go it alone, I heard is what you said. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go on a walk, just try to tap into that prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, Dr. Kevin Garrett.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you on.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. True Fraud, real stories, expert advice, brought to you by Pacific Crest Federal Credit Union. If you suspect you are a victim of fraud, we encourage you to reach out to your local law enforcement and your financial institution. Pacific Crest is federally insured by the NCUA.